Sure, you've got some ideas, but wouldn't it be nice to have something new to write about? After all, you don't want to be like a ruminant on the field, just chewing on the same stuff you've already swallowed before. Gross, right? Even if you currently have no clue what to write about, you're going to find some inspiration in this video. No, I won't tell you what to write, but I will show you how to find some fresh ideas. If you're new here, hi, I'm Katri, I'm your new writing bestie, and this is Protagonist Craft, the place for people who are kind of obsessed with that whole writing thing. I'm going to start with a tip that you're not going to like. To feel more inspired and to get more ideas, you need to dedicate time daily to, wait for it, doing nothing. Stop consuming content, stop trying to be entertained all the time, and just let yourself get bored. And obviously, I'm not saying never consume content because, hello, this is content and I do want you to watch it, but don't do it all the time. Don't let it be the only thing that you do. And before you ask, no, lying in bed waiting to fall asleep doesn't count, though I do wish it did. What you need is intentional time away from distractions and content and entertainment and just stuff. Just stare at a wall or look at birds or something. I believe in you. Sometimes you can do the dishes without listening to a podcast at the same time. Think of it as like decluttering for your mind. It's like brushing your teeth of your brain. But let's say you don't have any good ideas. Are you sure? Perhaps you could look inside the ideas compartment of your brain and see if there's maybe something usable after all, something that you have previously dismissed. Maybe you ended up discarding something because it felt a bit too big for your skills, or maybe you would have needed to do a lot of research that you just weren't ready to do. But maybe now is the time. Or maybe your idea just felt a little too unoriginal, but you watched my video on how to get a unique story idea and now you understand that perhaps you don't need to be unique after all. Because yes, you could upcycle an old idea, you could tweak it a little, you could turn it a little to the left. Maybe you could combine two very different ideas and come up with something exciting. In any case, start by listing all the ideas you've already had or something that you have tried to explore before but you just didn't properly act on it. And something that you thought, this could be fun, but no, I'm not going to write about it. Just list them all and see if there's something fun in there, or maybe you could combine different ideas into something that you're actually excited about. Another way to find more inspiration is to get out of your comfort zone a little. Why? Because the air there is a little fresher. It can get quite stale inside your own bubble where you never try anything new. Inspiration is a bit like a muscle, and in order for it to grow, you need to push it to do things that it hasn't done before. One way to do this is to try writing prompts that you don't immediately want to use. Yeah, I bet you didn't want to hear that. Sometimes you might spend ages trying to look for the perfect writing prompt, something that sort of encapsulates the exact vibe that you want to write now. But that almost goes against the whole point of writing prompts. I mean, if you already knew what you want to write, why do you need a prompt? Just write what you want to write. And if you want to use a writing prompt, use something that is new to you, something that's going to spark something new instead of being the same old, same old. You could also try writing in a whole different genre. And I don't mean that you need to write an entire novel in a genre that you don't even like and something that you're not even interested in. But you could write a short story or just a random scene in a genre that you've never experimented in. And yeah, if you don't read in that genre, you probably don't have the tools to properly write in that genre. But that's okay for the purposes of this exercise because you're not going to share this writing with anyone. It's just an exercise for your teeny tiny brain. If you prefer writing romance or at least stories with a heavy emphasis on relationships, try writing action instead. If you don't have it in you to plan and write a heist scene, perhaps you could write about two characters battling for the same priceless object. Or if that sounds too boring to bear, you could write about two characters trying to escape some kind of a disaster, like a collapsing building or a volcano about to erupt, and then one of them almost doesn't make it. If, on the other hand, you're well-versed in writing tense action scenes with gunshots and explosions, maybe try writing something a bit more intimate. And I don't necessarily mean intimate like your characters are dropping their panties, but something where they're close together emotionally and maybe spatially too. Like imagine a mother and daughter on a long car ride and they're trying to have a conversation while avoiding specific subjects like the daughter's impending divorce or the mother's alcohol problem. Or maybe you could write a scene where two characters are on their first date and one of them is totally into it and the other one can't wait to get home. So what's the point of doing all this? Well, first of all, inspiration is kind of like water. You have to turn on the tap first to get it. So if you first try to do something very difficult, then things that are less difficult for you could suddenly become easier. I mean, even easier. You know what I mean. But also, if doing the same thing over and over and over again hasn't worked for you this far, perhaps it's time to try something different. And lastly, you could learn something from this little experiment and you could bring what you've learned into your normal writing. Kind of like how runners will still benefit from weightlifting, even if they are not indeed competitive weightlifters. My next tip for writing inspiration is look at your own life. You definitely don't have to write a memoir or create a character who is exactly like you in disguise. But loads of writers draw from their own life experiences. I mean, have you ever been to a place? Any place? Have you done things? Have you talked to people? Have you touched animals? Have you felt feelings? If you answered yes to any of those questions, you do have some writing inspiration in your very own life. Maybe not for an entire novel's plot, but certainly for an interesting scene or two. For example, I got bitten by a cat one time. I mean, one of my own cats. And it wasn't like the kind of playful biting that you get when you're like playing with them. It was like the teeth went right through my skin and I was literally bleeding. My late cat Nöttis had got a little paw stuck on a window, like one of those little windows that you can open but only so far. And she was struggling to get out. And I was like, all right, I'll just do what I always do when she's got like a claw stuck on something. I just gently grab her and then, release the paw from there. But she was so panicked that she didn't realize that I was trying to help her. Obviously, she doesn't understand humans, talking. And she didn't understand that I was trying to help her. Obviously, was a cat. Now she's just a ghost. But yeah, she panicked and bit me and yeah, it wasn't pretty. Fortunately, I didn't need stitches, but I did get antibiotics for 3 days. And yes, my tetanus shots were up to date. Thank you for asking. So why did I tell you that? Because I used it in my book. I knew exactly what the character was thinking when she tried to free the cat, and I knew exactly what the bites felt. When another character helped her to clean and package the wound, that turned into one of my favorite scenes in that book. And yes, in theory, I could have written it without experiencing it first, but I wouldn't have because I wouldn't have thought of it. So maybe you've personally experienced something that you could use in your story and that could also turn into a really good scene. And I didn't know this before I watched her masterclass, but Judy Blume has actually written books for adults as well. And one of her books, called In the Unlikely Event, was actually inspired by actual plane crashes that happened in her hometown. And you don't need a catastrophic event like a plane crash to find some inspiration from your own hometown. When I think of interesting things that have happened in my hometown, I can only think of the serial Drowner. But yeah, that could also be material for a story. But you don't necessarily need to settle to your own hometown. Just pick anything interesting that has happened somewhere that you know of. Even Judy Blume borrowed an actual plane crash survivor's experiences to include in her own book, which is something that you can do too. I mean, not literally, you don't need to go find a plane crash survivor, but draw from other people's experiences. Reddit is a great place for that. It is a terrible place for many things, but it's a great place for hearing about people's life experiences. Mind you, I'm not saying that you should take other people's life experiences and say that they're your own or do whatever Arthur Golden did with the memoirs of a geisha. But what you can do is take something interesting that has happened to someone else and you could use that as the whole premise of your story, but you could also use it for a few scenes or as someone's backstory or just some kind of a detail that will bring authenticity to your writing. By the way, if you've been very concerned watching me wave my hand around near these candles, they are fake. I love them. I have so many. If you feel weird about doing something like that, remember that there are 8 billion people on this planet and there are no experiences that are completely unique. Almost anything could have happened to anyone any number of times. So it should be unlikely that someone is going to read your story and be like, you stole my opinion on supermarkets. You stole my experiences on dance classes. I mean, yeah, if you do steal a blog post and use it word for word, then yeah, somebody might notice that, but that's not what I'm encouraging you to do here. If you do feel like someone could be recognized from something, then either leave it alone or just tweak it a little to make it different. And there's also the caveat of minority experiences. So it's good to have many kinds of characters in your story, and it's great to do research. But if you're writing about some kind of a minority experience that you personally have never experienced, and it's like the whole point of your story, then it might be better to leave it alone. To leave it to people who are actually better suited to write about that stuff, who have personal experience in it. Even if you care about nothing else, you should care about the fact that you might get something horribly wrong. And yes, there are people who will say that you should be allowed to write about absolutely anything you want. And you know what? You can write about what you want, but you also need to accept that people will have opinions. And when you write something, people can say that, you know what, your story lacked credibility and kind of sucked. And I'm not trying to get into all of that discourse, but I just wanted to mention that here so that you know that this isn't what I'm encouraging you to do, to steal stuff from minorities and pretend that that's your own experiences, or talking over them. We want to be inspired by other people and not be like, I'm stealing this person's diary and I'm going to pretend that this story is my own. Anyway, next I want you to think about your family, and not just the people you live with or the person who gave birth to you, but just your extended family. You know, your uncle who isn't actually your uncle and your fifth cousin thrice removed, Are there any interesting stories there? Because I bet there are. So my grandma, who died 8.5 years ago, she gave birth to 4 children in total, but only 2 of them made it past infancy. My father was actually a twin, but his twin sister died from her birth-induced injuries just a few days after, being born. They were premature, and doctors didn't even know that my grandma was expecting twins. This was in the late 50s in, rural Finland. But, my grandma sometimes wondered if things would have been different if they'd known that she was expecting twins. And one time my dad said that sometimes he wonders what life would have been like with a sister. I would have definitely liked an aunt on that side of the family, but considering what a miracle it is that any of us actually exists, statistically speaking, and how even the smallest decisions can change everything, I doubt that I would even exist if my father's sister existed. Would she even have met my mother? I don't think so. So in a way, I live because she didn't. And because my grandma only had 2 boys, I think that's why I always had a special place in her heart. I'm getting to the point soon, but I want to share something else first. My grandma died while I was expecting my youngest daughter, and she didn't even know that I was pregnant. And at the time, we didn't even know that we were going to have a girl. But for some reason, a while before she fell ill and ultimately died, my grandma had knitted me a pair of pink baby socks, something that she shouldn't have thought that I had any need for. So why exactly did I tell you all that? Is it because I love oversharing my family's history? No. But I just gave you inspiration for about 20 different stories and or characters. But most importantly, I think I just showed you that you can just go and talk to someone about their life and about their personal history, and you will definitely find inspiration there. For some reason, I have the kind of face that strangers, especially older people, love telling me details about their lives. But even if that isn't you, don't let it stop you. Ask people questions. Personally, I'm a very active Red Cross volunteer, so I can't recommend volunteering enough. It's going to make your life awesome in so many ways. But if you're lacking inspiration because you don't know any real people, then go volunteer. But if you don't want to do that, if you don't want to talk to people, at the very least, read some memoirs. And I recommend picking ones written by people that you don't even know. You're more likely then to find something there that you've never heard of, and something that's going to inspire totally new ideas in you. Anyway, I want to get back to you. What are you good at? Besides writing, of course. What do you do for a living? What's your favorite hobby? And that could be something interesting to give your characters. Because you know what? People love reading about competent characters. Can't believe I lost one of my lights again. I can't live like this. Jesus Christ. Now, I know that especially young people tend to gravitate towards these characters who are just floating through life and aren't necessarily good at anything, because it's easy to feel like that you yourself are like that. And maybe you just don't know anything else. I've definitely done that. My early stories, they were about people who weren't really doing anything and stuff was just like happening to them. Those kinds of characters don't make up for great stories, I'm afraid to say. You don't need to write about a character who's the world expert of something, although that could be interesting as well. Even just one thing that the character is great at could make your story more interesting, and to have your have your readers actually care about that character. Even Donald Maass, in writing the Breakout novel, said that your main character should be exceptional somehow. There should be more something than the regular person, even if that's just something like they are funnier than the regular person, or just stupider, maybe, or more evil, just more anything. But you could just give them a skill that they're really, really good at. So, what are you good at? Is it crosswords? Is it dressage, or however you're supposed to pronounce that? Horses going like that. And then you're sitting atop like this with a top hat. You know what I mean. Are you great at recognizing different bird calls? Whatever it is, you can give that to your character and use that in your story. Don't dismiss any of that as irrelevant or inconsequential. You can put anything in your story and make it relevant. You'll have so much more insight and you'll be much more accurate than if you were just borrowing something from someone else. But that said, you can't keep doing this over and over and over again with the same skill, because you don't want to be writing the same character over and over and over again. If you are writing a series, then, knock yourself out, I guess. And yes, I can hear what you're saying. You're sick of thinking about your own life experiences and about real people. You want some other way to find inspiration instead. And maybe you're not saying that, but that's where we're going anyway. Go read your favorite book or watch your favorite movie. Is there something there that you could borrow? And I don't mean that you go watch Jurassic Park and then you write about bringing dinosaurs to life, but maybe you could write about bringing mammoths to life instead. And I used to be legit obsessed with mammoths. It's not even funny, and I completely blame Stephen Baxter's Mammoth trilogy. Although the final book where the main character Mammoth is in Mars it definitely left a mark in my brain, and not in a good way. Slightly traumatizing, I'd say. But anyway, talk about an interesting premise. What was I supposed to talk about? Right, yes, using existing media to inspire your stories. There's an episode of Call the Midwife where Sister Monica Joan goes missing, and then they find the body of an elderly woman in the Thames, and it does turn out not to be Sister Monica Joan, it's someone completely different. But it just got me thinking, what if I wrote a story where someone goes missing and then another body turns up? I haven't used that idea yet, but it's just a great example how you could take like a random plot event from a whole series, use that as the entire premise of your story. Or maybe you could take something that you like in a book or a movie or TV show and then use that in your story that is in a completely different genre. I, like many other people, really like Gilmore Girls, and I've been thinking that would be fun to write a fantasy novel that would take place in a small town that would be like Stars Hollow, except instead of these quirky people, they would be quirky witches and vampires and ghosts. Wouldn't that be fun? And yeah, I loved reading about witches and ghosts and vampires when I was a child. And I still haven't found found any book that would hit the same way as those books that I read as a children. Obviously, I can still read those books, but I've been thinking for example, I enjoyed the Little Vampire books by, what's her name again? Angela Sommer Bodenberg, however you're supposed to pronounce her name, Bodenberg. And yeah, I've been thinking I want to write something that is like that feels like that, but it's for adults. And yes, I know they are vampire novels for adults, but they don't feel the same way that the books that I read as a child did. I want cozy fantasy stories with real plots that are applicable to adult lives. And I don't know, maybe I will write something like that. If you do know something like that, let me know, please. I love witches and ghosts and old castles and vampires and stuff. Another way to get inspiration from existing media is to take a bit of dialogue and then take that out of context and use that as the basis of your story. Talking about Call the Midwife again, in one of the episodes, I think in some of the newest series, one of the side characters says something like, he says, I'm his favorite. He always chooses me. And in the context, it's definitely not romantic. This character works in a brothel and she's talking about a particularly violent customer. What would he be called? I don't know. But anyway, but you could take that and use that in a horror novel, for example. And when I was scripting this video, I had bones in the background. I mean, that TV show, not like actual bones. And this bit of dialogue stood out to me. I don't matter, only she matters. The character Temperance Brennan was testifying in court and was talking about the victim. But again, you could take that out of context and use that in your story. Where else could it become relevant? So go do that. Go read quotes from TV shows or movies or books and see what might spark in here. Or hey, what if you listen to music? What if you could use a song to inspire an entire story? Or, inspire just a quick writing exercise if that's what you need. If you want to write fantasy, you could go and listen to some epic metal songs. And I can't tell you how many fantasy novels I've imagined in my head as a teenager while listening to Nightwish. Or you could even take an instrumental song, something like this. And think, what's happening when this music is playing? What do I see? And here's one more idea. Old photographs. If you don't have any old family photos of your own, why do these keep turning on? God. You could go to an antique store, because sometimes they have old photographs there. So just buy a picture or two. Of course, you can find old pictures on the internet as well, but just being able to hold a photo in your hands, in my opinion, is much more inspiring. So who are those people? Why are they there? What's going on? A while ago, when I went visiting my dad, we looked at some old family photographs, and there were loads of photos there that just my grandparents owned. And they didn't know who those people were in those photos, and it just kind of messed with my head. Like, who does know these people? Does anyone know them? Does anyone know their names? Does anyone talk about them anymore? They were like ghosts, except they weren't ghosts. They used to be real people with their own thoughts and dreams and mistakes and ideas and bad days and bad hair days and things, just like what you have, what I have. And it's just, they're gone now. What happened to their stories? Well, you could rewrite those stories. I can't go back in time and find them and ask them, what do you dream of? What do you like? But I can make things up. That's kind of my job as a writer. So I hope this video has given you some inspiration for how to mine for story ideas. And speaking of mining, have you tried my idea mining technique yet? You can get it in my completely free story idea workbook. So go get that, start finding your best story ideas, and keep writing.